Ever since the 1970s, when the Hong Kong Sevens rugby tournament started, so-called rugby experts have tried to figure out what is Fiji's secret. A little nation of less than 1 million people from a third world country and having so much success. Surely we can figure out what is their secret. Over the years they have tried and finally in recent years they have figured it out and they've even come up with a name for it. It's called control chaos. Control chaos, which is another way of saying we haven't got a clue what it is. This video I will be giving you good people from Fiji and friends of Fiji what is behind the way Fijians play their rugby. And in this way you can smile with us as the so-called rugby expert explain away, and you would nod your head and say, they don't know, but I know. Before we go on, I'd like to dedicate this video to the Indo-Fijians of Auckland, New Zealand. I think, in my opinion, sometimes they are more Fijians than the ethos Fijians living in Auckland. And that is why I'm dedicating this video to you guys. I'll explain a little more during the video why I'm dedicating this to the Indo-Fijians of Auckland. Let's get into the video.
We've got a few clips and a little bit of theory that's going to fly into how it is that they play and why it is they are so successful at their controlled chaos. Well, we're going back to school again, using the chalkboard to show how Fiji love to attack. That's their breakdown, where the ruck is, and the defence is set against them. Now, what Fiji do almost perfectly is attack back at the ball. They go for the spaces in between the defenders, meaning that when the defenders look at the ball, it takes a split second for that line break to happen and then ensuing chaos from Fiji.
To understand the Fijian mentality is to know that Fijians have understood something very important in life, and that is you are not the most important person in the world. Meaning me, I'm not the most important person in the world. The most important person is the person I'm interacting with. A lot of tourists come to Fiji. They always say, Fijians are some of the most friendliest people in the world. They meet you with a big smile. Well, when I meet you, I have this need that I need to contribute to your life. Because I may not have something to give to you, the least I can do is to smile, and hopefully I'll make you happy. In that way, I'm doing something for you. Before you think that this is a very weird way of looking at oneself, well, actually it's quite a common concept. A lot of world religion teaches this concept, and from a common sense point of view, it is a very way to carry out, to relate to other people. Most military academy teaches this concept, or this is one of the first things that they learn, and that is to never underestimate your enemy. A book written by Sun Tzu, which is compulsory reading in any military academy, called The Art of War, talks about this concept. Actually teaches this concept as one of its very important way to view, to relate to other people. Most world religion teach this concept. Jesus Christ in the gospel actually talks about it. So when a Fijian meets you for the first time and says Bula with a big smile, he is by default treating you with respect, since he doesn't know you. So the best way to treat you is to respect you. Okay, you might be asking, how does this translate to rugby? Before a Fijian team engages the other team, he considers himself as the underdog. From the onset, he considers the other team as a superior team. Like I said, this is not a very uncommon concept. Christianity teaches this concept over and over again in the Gospels. So this is why you'll hardly ever see a Fijian team crying after they have lost a game. You'll probably see them crying after they've won a game, but hardly ever if they have lost. Why? Because from the start, he considers himself the lesser team. But when he wins, he is overcome with emotion because he won, and the power that enabled him to win must have come from a bigger source than what he knows he is capable of.
Now, first I'd like to thank God for the strength and the win today. I'm speechless. Australia is a very good side. They took us to the wire.
Okay, this is the way of a warrior. And let me say, this is the way we are as Fijians. You consider yourself lesser than the other person from the get-go. Okay, because of Fiji's style of playing to match the other team's style, you will sometimes see them losing to teams that are probably way down on the totem pole. Because the Fijian concept is you need to adjust to the other person. The other person is more important to you. It is a very people-oriented culture. Okay, let's go back to rugby. That is why their game is fluid. It has no style because it adjusts to the other person. It is people-centered because this, at the core, is how a Fijian think. You adjust to the other person. You are people-centric. I think in the Fijian culture there is no introvert. We are all extroverts. We killed off the introverts over generations of being in a culture that is a warring culture. Okay, because Fiji adjusts to the other team's style and the game is dependent on what the other team has brought with them, a Fijian will only take a gap if those on the edges of the gap will most likely get him through. So he will adjust his game to who he is playing against. So it is not really about the gap, but rather those at the edges of the gap in comparison to what he's got, his skills, his strength, whether be it is sheer strength, as in the case of Tui Soba, or how slippery he is, as in the case of Jerry Tuai. So it's not just a gap. Not just any gap will do. It depends on who are at the edges of the gap. And how do they know this? Well, in the case of the Fiji team, there are 12 men who can read the game just like a coach. And that is why the Fijian team will always study their opponent's individual members to mark out their individual strength and therefore determine who they best match with. In a match, you will often see the Fijian team pointing at the various team member of the opposing team. This is when they declare to the other team members in their team, I'm with that guy, or I'm with this person or that person. So, as you can see, Fiji's game is people-oriented. It depends on the other person. Sometimes a rookie in the Fiji team may not be quite sure who he should match up with. This is when senior players will guide him, as Isaki Katonimbao is doing in this instance. You really cannot fight like the Romans when you are in a sevens game. Because you are in a guerrilla warfare kind of situation. Therefore, every man in the team has to be an army unto himself. This is why with only 6 players in the field, the Fijian team still can manage to score. Because a team is not one single hammer. Rather, it is 7, sometimes 6, or even at times 5 hammers who are capable of committing 2 or even 3 of the opposing side to his rampage. And this is where the so-called experts, I think, don't get it. They are still reading the game, in my opinion, using the Roman mentality, where the team is supposed to be a single instrument with one game plan as a whole. Okay? Before I close, let me go back to where why I'm dedicating this video to the Indo-Fijians of Auckland. A few years back, I visited Auckland and I was quite surprised in that when I meet a Tokay Fijian in town or on the road, it seems they will deliberately look away or ignore me. Of course, I'm speaking generally here because those who know me would always answer back with a mbula when I say mbula to them. However, the Indo-Fijians seems to be always ready to say mbula. They're always ready to engage. And they seem to be extra proud to be a Fijian. And I always up for a big bula and sometimes even a chat when we meet in town, even though I might not know them personally. This is the Fijian way. In Fiji, whether you know someone or you don't know them, when you meet them in the road in the morning, you say, Yandra, Yandra Pinaka. And he will, of course, answer back, Yandra, or Bula, depending on what time of the day it is. Because in the Fijian culture, we hold a person as the most important element of any engagement. Even when we play rugby, we adjust according to his style because he is more important than me. This is how we are. The person is paramount. The person you are interacting with is paramount. Between team members, when someone is carrying the ball, there are only 2 or 3 possible directions. He can pass the ball out. And you following him, you can read it. Depending on who is opposing him and what situation he's in, you can work out. There are probably only 1 or 2 ways he's going to pass the ball. As a supporting player, that is what you got to work out. In the case of PO2Y, 3 times out of 3, he will most probably pass it out the back door. So that is where you're supposed to be when the pressure is too much and he's looking to offload. This is the Fijian way. It is all about the person I'm interacting with, whether it is at work, in the village, or even at play in a rugby game. It's all about the other person, not about me, but about the person I'm interacting with. It is not about the set plays and not about the game, because as a wise man once said, everyone has got a plan until he gets punched in the nose. Okay, that's the end of our video this week. Tune in next week and I'll continue on with this subject. Maybe for the next 2 or 3 series, we'll continue on with this subject of rugby and where the Fijian culture comes into the Fijian game. Naka, mode, till next week.